my name is Dom. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I typically make bookish content, movie content, and anything else in between because I like to do whatever I want on this channel, and tonight is going to be bookish content. For today's video, we're going to go over the 14 books I read in the month of March. Let's jump right into the video. So the first book I'm going to talk about, I started in February and then completed in March, and that is The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy by Mackenzie Lee. This is book 2 of the Montague siblings trilogy. The first one is definitely the most well-known. It's The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. If you watched my last video about my last bookish wrap-up, you will know I actually did not like that book. As of now, it is my least favorite book of 2024. I liked the story. I just thought Monty was such an annoying main character to read from. But knowing the other two books are in a different point of view, that's why I continued on with the trilogy, and especially because I did like Felicity in the first book, so why not read a book in her point of view? This specific book takes place within like a year later of the first book's events. She really wants to be a doctor, but given she lives in 1700s England, that's not going to happen because she's a woman. She's pointed to the direction of this one dude who could possibly help her, take her in. She finds out that he is currently engaged to a former best friend, so she goes to Germany to meet him, and there's dragons involved in this. And you know what? I did like this better than the first one. The first book I gave 2 out of 5 stars. This I gave 3.75 out of 5. And again, simply because I like Felicity better as a main character. I really like how sassy she is, how headstrong, very independent, knows what she wants. And I really did like watching her change throughout the story. Like, her goal to do what she wants stayed the same throughout the story, but what she wants kind of changes depending on her circumstance. And I like the other characters as well. I like the side characters in this one a lot better than the first book. There are themes of feminism and religion in this book, and I want to say asexuality. I'm assuming that's what Felicity is supposed to be. Religion wasn't too prominent, but even then I'm not Muslim, so I can't really comment on that because that is the religion that was featured. I can't really comment on the asexuality because I am not asexual. The feminism though, I thought was handled fine. The reason this is 3.75 out of 5 stars and not a total of 5 out of 5 is because in the end I did think the story was just okay. I liked the adventure. The one thing I did like about the first book was how adventurous it was. And I wish this book is adventurous, but I wish it was on the same level. And also some of the characters from the first book were left hanging with this. Like, she doesn't even like reminisce on the Spanish siblings, because I was really wondering what happened to them, but I guess we'll never find out because she doesn't reminisce on them and they do not reminisce about them in the third book. But like I said, 3.75 out of 5 stars. Another book I started in February but finished in March was Beloved by Toni Morrison. And this book is about Seth, who is a former slave, and 18 years later she is still haunted by the memories. And not only that, but the house she lives in is haunted by the ghost of one of her children, and then lo and behold, a few days later, that child comes back to life. But she doesn't come back to life at the age she died at. She died around 2 years old. She comes back to life at the age she would have been had she lived. And this is one of the most haunting stories I've ever read. Just seeing Seth go through the trauma of slavery and how she dealt with that, because she does have a living child. She has 3 living children, just 2 ran away. So the daughter that lives with her, how that affects the daughter, because Denver has never seen slavery. So there's that like generational trauma aspect, because it does, even though Denver never went through it. The way her mom acts affects her, and just seeing how she treats Beloved just because of so much guilt and like just the whole like what could have been aspect. There's some beautiful imagery in this, and then the writing is very well done too, and is what makes it haunting. I will say there's a few moments that are kind of confusing. I noticed Toni Morrison, now that I read this one, this is my second Toni Morrison book, she has a very unique way of describing things sometimes, because I read Song of Solomon my last year of high school, and I remember being confused by some passages. And even in this book, there were a few times I was confused and had to reread a passage a few times just to understand what Toni Morrison was trying to say, because she has a very almost weird way of describing certain stuff. I don't really remember Song of Solomon, but when it comes to this book specifically, like, that unique writing style works, because Seth is going through a very weird situation. A thing that gets me too about this book is the way Toni Morrison is able to get you to sympathize with Seth. If you want to look at the world through black and white lenses and like no nuance, like Seth did a very bad thing, but when you do bring in the nuance, it's like you can't help but feel sorry for her, because I can't imagine being in the spot she was in, like having so much trauma that she thought that solution was the solution. And it's what makes Beloved, the character, a very well done personification of the trauma that Black people suffered due to slavery. I ended up giving this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next I read Avatar: The Last Airbender, Azula in the Spirit Temple by Faith Erin Hicks. This comic book takes place about 2 years after the events of the original TV show. Azula was the main villain, and this is her story for afterwards. I want to say you need to read the comic Smoke and Shadow to understand where she's at right now, but at the same time I'm hesitant to say that because I feel like they retconned a few things from that comic. So they catch you up to speed. They did go with the trope I'm not a huge fan of, which is bringing back the already defeated villain and having them be a villain again. She was kidnapping kids in Smoke and Shadow. Okay. Great idea. The whole dark spirit thing she was pretending to be, fascinating idea, but I was upset when, you know, they pulled a Scooby-Doo, pulled the mask off and it was her, because it's like, oh, cool. I wanted something new, but whatever. Those group of girls she is with in the beginning of this comic. She pisses them off because one of their friends is left behind because they were doing whatever they were doing to a town and one of them got caught. Azula didn't want to grab her, she wanted to keep going, which is very much in character, and the girls were like, no, we need to save her, she's one of us, and Azula was like, okay. But those girls, the next morning, those girls leave Azula, so she is now alone. If you remember from the original TV show, that was one of her fears, being alone. So she wanders into this temple, and it's full of spirits, and she basically has to come to terms with her past and then the awful things she did. To put things into perspective, if you haven't seen the show, in the show she is 14, so in this comic she should be around 16. But I had very mixed feelings about this comic book. When I first finished it, I actually hated this. I remember I like threw it across the room. I thought it was a pointless story. It is very much, before I like dive into it, everything that happens in this is very much in character for Azula. But I thought it was a pointless story because by the end of it, I thought there was no growth. And when I say growth, I don't mean a redemption arc. As much as I'm on the train that she can have a redemption arc, that's not what I mean by growth. I mean like just any sort of progress, whether she becomes nicer or even more evil, just not this like, I just feel like she's in a very stagnant place right now in the comics. And that's what I thought by the end. I thought she was very two-dimensional in this and not the typical three-dimensional character we all appreciate from the original show. But then I thought about it some more. So my initial read, this was a 2 out of 5 star book, and then I ended up, after thinking about it, I did give this 3.5 out of 5 stars. Again, I do want to stress that I was absolutely not expecting a redemption arc in this comic. If you're not in the Avatar fandom, there is a huge debate about whether or not Azula both deserves one and if it's possible. Like where I'm at right now, I don't think she deserves a redemption arc, but I do think it's possible. I think I truly believe that statement can exist. A lot of people get very confused, but I'm also trying not to spoil things. In the OG show, what I got from Azula is that she was a sympathetic villain. I felt bad for her in the end, especially when it was really honed in that everything she is today is because her father weaponized her, but also at the same time, she made her choices. Often she was given two. She chose monstrosity. So not only was she a victim of her father's abuse, she was also a perpetrator of the abuse she inflicted on others. I mean, hence that she's a villain. And then something I really did appreciate about this comic is that the spirits called her out. The spirits would manifest themselves as people in her lives. So like a spirit Ursa, who's her mother, appeared. A spirit Zuko appeared. Spirits Ty Lee and May appeared, and all of them were like, you fucked up. You did horrible, horrible things. And Azula really did need that call out. And I'm glad she's facing that, because me personally, not to like, if you're new here, I think I said that phrase like 5 times in this video. If you're new here though, Avatar: The Last Airbender is my special interest. I have so many like, what are they called? Headcanons. If I got what I wanted, Azula would have her redemption arc, because like, if we're gonna be allegorical here, like her father Ozai was clearly like Hitler, Imperial Japan of the series, and then she was like Hitler Youth. I wrote a whole paper about how Hitler Youth technically had redemption arcs, aka the denazification programs. So I believe a redemption arc for her is possible. However, I want that journey to be grueling. I want it to be gruesome. Like I want I want her to suffer through it the way Zuko did, but even more so because she was a worse person. Does that make sense? Does that sound normal? I want my favorite character to suffer. But with all the spirits calling her out in this, I felt like I was getting a semblance of what I wanted. Because I sure as hell don't want that redemption arc to be easy, because then it definitely does not feel deserved. Another thing I liked about this comic is that you see she has this vision of a happy and healthy life, but I like that it's a very warped sense of what that means. Because in her perfect world, her mom is there, her dad, Zuko is there without the scar on his face, meaning Ozai never attacked him. But they're also praising her for the terrible things she did. They're praising her for taking over Ba Sing Se. They're praising her for shooting Aang with lightning. So it's a warped sense of happy and healthy because, you know, her family is there. That is a sign of a happy, healthy family. It's a sign of a happy family, I should say, but I don't want to call it healthy because they're praising her for doing terrible things, which I think also goes back to what I mean by calling her a sympathetic villain in the OG show. Because in the OG show, you see, like, near the finale, you see that she does realize what her father did to her is bad, but she's having a hard time coming to terms with that. That's the one parent that gave her any semblance of care and affection, or at least her idea of care and affection. But in the grand scheme of things, you know, she did want her mom's acceptance. She wanted her mom to be there. You see a few parts of the show where she did want Zuko to be there. It's not really explicit. It's just there are certain scenes when their dad's out of the picture, they actually got along pretty well. So I sympathize with her in regards to wanting your family to be there and cheer on your achievements, but she's a villain given what those achievements are. Very long explanation for what I mean by warped sense of happy and healthy. Oh boy. I'm gonna have to spoil the end of this comic to make my next point. So at the end of the comic, there are multiple spirits coming for her throat. Once they stop manifesting as the people of her life and now they're just spiritual beings, they explicitly give her chances at redemption. They basically say, either you could change yourself, we're giving you that chance right now. If you don't, you're still a monster. Yeah, this temple is a crossroads for those who have followed the wrong path. It offers a second chance to choose for the better. You, little Fire Lord, were offered redemption and forgiveness, but you rejected what we had to give you. I take many forms, and it is your cruelty and desire for vengeance that has shaped me into this, a mirror of your own inner self. Yeah, actually, even earlier than this, the Spirit Zuko says, "You're alone, Azula, no one to blame but yourself. Will you ask for forgiveness?" And then she freaks out, and that's what the spirit is referring to. I have a lot to say about this. Part of me is glad that she said no. One, because that's very in character. We don't want to jump the gun here. Two, again, if she had said yes, that is a very, very rushed redemption arc. No, there was no room for development for that to happen. And three, it would not be real because she would be apologizing to the fake versions of Zuko, Ursa, May, and Ty Lee. And Azula actually sees through that, so I'm glad to see that she's still smart, because one of my nitpicks with previous comics is that I feel like she wasn't as intelligent as we see in the OG show, but I'm getting a semblance of that in this comic. We love having different writers sometimes. I personally am not sure if the audience is supposed to take what the spirit said at face value. Part of me thinks we're not supposed to, one, because, you know, that would make for a very boring story, no development, blah, blah, blah. And two, near the end, she does, that I'm not going to spoil, but she does make a certain choice that shows she is slightly changing, just ever so slowly. But on the other hand, there has been no announcements about future Azula material. So, like, is this the last we're gonna see her? Part of me can see this being taken at face value just because there is so much disagreement in the fandom about whether or not she deserves a redemption arc. So I could see this as the Avatar being like, yo, it's not gonna happen. We are explicitly telling you it's not gonna happen. But me personally, again, that comes off as bad writing because you're hitting us over the head with it. There's like no subtlety. It's not, you know, it's not hidden. I can't say that word to save my life, so I'm gonna avoid saying it. It's just too in your face. But also, I can see this being the beginning of a new arc for her. So, long story short, I just hope there's some sort of follow-up. Maybe Avatar Studios is cooking something. I don't know. I'm really hoping we get more because she is my favorite character, and also she just does feel very flat. I think one of the reasons I had such an issue with my initial read was the pacing of this. I forgot to mention that. This comic is very, very fast paced to the point I didn't even realize I had read the ending at first. I turned the page and I was like, what do you mean that's it? Like, my brain was still going. So I do think the too fast pacing really affects how you would read this. But I would love getting more material, and I want these characters to have proper conclusions, because Legend of Korra does not tell you what happened with her. I'm assuming she's fine in old age, because Zuko seems pretty peaceful in The Legend of Korra, so who knows? I would actually love for Azula to become an anti-hero, whatever it's called, because I think that would be a good compromise between, you know, a good Azula versus a villainous Azula. I'm getting really tired of the villainous Azula, again, because I hate that trope. I hate bringing back villains you already defeated. I want new material, and I want some sort of development for her. But I don't want to keep running in circles, because that's what Smoke and Shadow felt like. And I feel like we would open up more doors for her character if she was an anti-hero. What's super positive about this comic, though, is that the art style in this is magnificent, and like the color palettes, like the blues and the purples, my absolute favorite. And I loved seeing her confess to fake Ursa, albeit a fake Ursa, but still confessing to her, like, oh, you know, you left me, like, I had no choice but to become my father's tool. And it just, you could see that part of her knows what she's doing is wrong, but she keeps choosing that monstrosity, and I love exploring that part of her psyche. But that was a very long-winded review. 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next I read Avatar: The Last Airbender Legacy. This is by, his name's not on the title, Michael Teitelbaum. This whole book is a letter Aang wrote to his son Tenzin. I thought this book was going to be very exciting, because he says in the letter he's going to say information that Tenzin won't learn in textbooks in school. So I was like, yes, brand new information. This is basically just a summary of the TV show. I don't want to say this was a waste of time, because it like was kind of cute. It had some cute art, but also like, why read this when I can just watch the TV show, you know? There are like cute little like knickknacks of sorts in this. Like here you see a Ba Sing Se postcard, so I thought that was cool. There's a poster of all the creatures. Here we see Katara's scroll. Hold on. I don't want to rip this either, but we see her waterbending scroll that she gets from the pirates. I believe Appa's missing poster. Oh, we see a poster for the Ember Island, what are they called? Ember Island players. And then, yeah, Appa's missing poster. So these things are cool, like the cute little knickknacks. Maybe that's why you should buy the book, just to play with those, but otherwise, watch the TV show. 3 out of 5 stars. So next I read the last book in the Montague Siblings trilogy, and that is The Nobleman's Guide to Scandal and Shipwrecks by Mackenzie Lee. This is in Adrian's point of view. If you remember from the first book, Monty mentions they have a baby brother. So this takes place 18 years after the original 2 books. He's going to be taking his father's place in politics soon, but he doesn't agree with his father's politics, and his mom is dead. Yeah, spoiler. She leaves some clues. He essentially has to find the Flying Dutchman. However, this guy has some of the most intense, generalized anxiety disorder I have ever read from. And yeah, it's just really fun adventures that made me want to read horror books about shipwrecks. Things I liked about this book: Adrian's relationship with his fiance was really cute, and I really liked his dynamic with Monty and Felicity at first. It was rocky when they first met, but watching it develop was really fun. And I do like that his story, because his anxiety is so high and the way everything was described, you don't actually know if what he saw was actually real compared to the first 2 books, because in the first 2 books it's very explicit. But in this one I kind of felt like I was reading a ghost story. I did give this a low rating though. I gave this 2.75 out of 5 stars. And that is because while I think he's a very well written character with anxiety, the anxiety aspects were very, very well done. Like his overthinking, the description of panic attacks as someone with anxiety, relatable. However, it makes for a very, very irritating read at times. You do need a lot of patience to read from this guy. Monty is a huge part of this book too, and he is just as annoying as the first one. I think one of the reasons I like the second book so much better is because he's barely in it. And something that was befuddling to me is that Monty and Felicity should be in their 30s in this book, like their late 30s, and yet they still act like teenagers. I thought that was very strange. It had a cute ending though, and because of those other aspects, it's why I don't hate it. I don't dislike it as much as the first book, but again, kind of subpar, 2.75 out of 5 stars. The next 2 books I'm just going to talk about at the same time because I gave them the same rating for the same reasons, as that is Spy X Family Volume 1 and Volume 2 by Tatsuya Endo. So this series takes place during a Cold War that is right after another war between the East and the West. Agent Twilight is a spy in the West, and he needs to infiltrate the East in order to prevent another war. So part of this mission is that he has to create a fake family, get his daughter into this high esteemed school, and she needs to become an Imperial Scholar, so he is even closer to meeting what's his face? Donovan Desmond. There's already a lot going on with that, right? Right. But hold up. Agent Twilight, for his mission, goes by the name Lloyd Forger. He adopts Anya, and him and Yor agree to marry. However, Yor doesn't know that Lloyd is a spy, Lloyd doesn't know that Yor is an assassin, neither of them know that Anya is a telepath, and Anya, being a telepath, knows everything that's going on around her, but she's only 5 years old, so she can't really comprehend it. She also doesn't want to be caught, so she doesn't really say anything. And I absolutely adore this story. It's a slice of life with shonen elements, which I never in my life thought I would love, but I do, and it feels like a romantic comedy, which again, I'm not the biggest fan of, and yet I still love this. I absolutely adore the anime, which is why I decided to read the manga from the beginning. I just want to read the manga because I'm tired of getting spoilers on Twitter and Reddit. Like, I want to find out things and on my own terms. But I wanted to read from the beginning just in case there's some changes the anime made, and surprisingly the anime hasn't actually made a lot. It's very accurate to these. You do kind of need to go into this with like a slight suspension of disbelief, but that's also what makes for a fun, goofy story. And I really like the dynamics between the family because despite being a fake family, Lloyd and Yor is like one of the best relationships I've seen in manga. And Anya acts like an actual child. I typically have issues when it comes with children in manga and anime just because I feel like they just act so weird and in ways children wouldn't typically act. I do not have that problem with little Miss Anya, and I love it. She actually acts like a 5-year-old, and I absolutely adore it. It's just a really funny, adorable series, and I catch myself laughing aloud multiple times. I love my family so much. I gave both of these volumes 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Ready Player 2 by Ernest Cline. I read the first book last year, had a lot of fun with it. That's why I decided to read the sequel, despite all the bad things I was hearing about it. But I loved it for my own opinion. And here we are, because I have a very terrible one. So this takes place in a world that is quite literally falling apart. Everyone is poor and murdering each other. The only sense of relief they get is from a video game called The Oasis, which is basically a virtual reality. In the last book, they had to play a game, and whoever found the egg became the heir to the creator of The Oasis. They're a multi-billionaire. They're controlling the Oasis now, blah, blah, blah. Given who the main character is, you can guess what happens in the first book. So here we are in the second book. He is now the owner, one of the co-owners actually, of the Oasis. He is rich, and shit hits the fucking fan. Admittedly, I was not feeling this book within the first couple chapters because it is very, very exposition heavy. I'm also not a fan of the trope that some books do when they have sequels. It's like they spend that, you know how they spend an entire series trying to get the girl, get the guy, depending on what they like, and then sometimes some authors decide to have them break up a week later. That's what happens in this. He spends the whole book crushing on Sam, the whole first book crushing on Sam, Artemis, whatever her name is. This book, it opens up with the fact that they're broken up after a fucking week. I had the villain revival thing going on, and I've already ranted about how much I don't like that. But the #1 reason why I don't like this book and thought it was a waste of my time is that it is quite literally the same plot to the anime Sword Art Online, which is an anime that I absolutely hated. I lasted 1 season. So in Sword Art Online, they have these game systems that basically connect to your brain. It's like the wavelengths controlling everything. So you're literally just sitting there as you control shit, the virtual reality with your mind. The creator of said game decides that he is going to lock everyone in the game. And in order to turn the system off, you need to beat the game. And what's the plot of Ready Player 2? Well, now that he's the winner and owns the Oasis, he discovers that James Holloway was hiding something. What is it? Wow, it's a new device that you simply put on your head, and your brain controls everything. What could go wrong? A lot of shit apparently that Artemis told him was gonna go wrong, but no one listened to her. An AI version of James Holloway appears and is like, hey, I am going to lock everyone in the Oasis right now within the Oasis until you win my game. You cannot log out until you win said game, and if you don't win, you're all in trouble. And what's another reason this is so similar to Sword Art Online? Well, in Sword Art Online, if you die in the game, you died in real life. In this book, if you died in the game, your body went unconscious in real life. So there's a slight difference, so I guess it's not plagiarizing. But also at the same time, how did this guy not get in trouble for plagiarism? He says, actually, they say at one point in the book, they mention Sword Art Online. He literally said, you guys watched Sword Art Online and didn't think something like this could happen. And it's like, you mentioned that fuck-ass anime and you still plagiarized it? Is that like how he got away with it? And I guess another reason he got away with it is that in Sword Art Online they didn't have a time limit, whereas in this one they have 12 hours. But girl, as soon as that fucking anime was mentioned and as soon as I saw the plot similarities, I lost all interest in this book. Again, I already didn't have a lot in the beginning with the way it started out, but as soon as that happened, I was out. I was out. I should have stopped listening because I listened to it on audiobook. I didn't stop because I had actually waited for 10 weeks. I put this on hold back in 2023, and it finally became available in March 2024. And I was at work. I needed something to listen to while I was at work. And because I didn't want to hear the clues of the game because I thought they were so well done in the first book, I wanted to see how this book would achieve it. But somehow this book was even more info dumpy than the last one. The last one, the author was very clearly using to show off his 80s knowledge. And I said this in my review for the last one. If you're very well versed in the 80s, I can imagine the exposition of both these books would drive you nuts, especially this one because it's even worse. Because I know a lot about John Hughes films, and there's a part of the book where they go to a John Hughes planet, and I actually nearly lost my mind because I kept wanting to say, like, move on. I know. So if you're more well-versed in the 80s than I am, good luck. And I also saw the ending coming once the point of the story became clearer. So when it happened, I was like, come on, oh my god. Like I think I actually audibly said that, and one of the lab technicians looked at me, which, sorry, the voices in my head are going crazy. But yeah, and it's like weirdly pro AI, which given the current conversation around AI right now, I thought was a little strange because this is a very recently written book. This was just bad, 2 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. This has been on my TBR since I was in elementary school and the movie came out. I've never seen the movie because I didn't want spoilers for this book, and I'm finally reading it like 13 years later. So what is this about? This is about a girl whose name, Susie. Oh my god, I almost said Saoirse, but that's the actress. This guy lures her into an underground hole where he does rape and murder her. So she reappears as a ghost, and throughout the entire book, she is watching her family and friends grieve and slowly trying to get over her loss. I really loved the first 80% of this book. I thought it was a wonderful exploration of familial grief. I really liked the direction she was taking with this, where it was the side characters that had to grow rather than the protagonist herself. Something I did not like about this book, though, is that it does use the cheating trope, which I am not a fan of. I'm so tired of couples cheating on each other. I get it because I've heard it's actually very common that when a couple loses a child, they often do grow apart. So I understand why the trope was used, but I hate it. But one thing I can appreciate about it is that it was actually the wife who does the cheating and not the husband. So, I mean, if you're gonna use it, at least twist it a little. There's also a very weird sex scene in this book. I'm not gonna go into detail about like what it is, but like I will say I can understand the reasoning behind it. I can understand why the author made this choice. It's just the execution was bizarre. The ending of this book also left much to be desired. Like it just falls off. Like it very much feels like the author just kept right on writing and at one point decided she was too tired, she was sick of the story, and just stopped. I actually had to reread the last passage because I thought I missed something at first. So because of that, I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Spy X Family Volume 3. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars because I do have the same praises as the first 2 volumes, and in fact, like, Lloyd and Yor had me screaming and kicking, giggling, and kicking my feet in the air during this volume more so than the other 2. However, Yor's brother is introduced in this, and he is so creepy and annoying. It's made very clear in the narrative you're supposed to find him creepy and annoying. So it works. That means the writing is well done, but it's not fun to read from, so that's why I docked half a point. Then I read Lisa and Lottie by Eric Kastner. This is about 2 girls that meet at summer camp. One is from Munich, the other is from Vienna. but they notice that they look exactly alike. Through trial and error, they find out that they are actually twins. They were separated at birth when their parents got divorced, so they create this scheme where one of them is going to go meet their parent in Munich and the other is going to meet their parent in Vienna. And as you can guess, this is what the movie The Parent Trap is based on. I'm trying to read all the books that Disney movies are based on, so this is one of them. I finally get to tick off something on the list. Very quick review of this. It was cute, but I'm way too old for this. It was it was a lot of telling, not enough showing, but like it had to be given who the target audience is. The target audience of this book is very, very young, like 7 or 8. So I'm too old for this. 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read Demon Slayer Stories of Water and Flame by, not the original manga author, this is by Ryoji Hirano. So the original Demon Slayer series is about a boy living in the Taisho era Japan. It is run amok by demons. His sister is turned into a demon. So he joins the Demon Slayer court so he can find a way to turn her back into a human. In this book, it's 2 short stories. One is Giyu's story, he is the water Hashira, and then the other is Rengoku's story, who is the flame Hashira. They're both cute. When it comes to Giyu's, I liked seeing him and Shinobu together again because they are my favorite characters of the whole series. I like their dynamic. I like seeing them work together. I will say though, neither of these stories really like stood out to me, especially Rengoku's, because it's just a rehash of his manga arc. The art is really good though. It's not by the original manga artist, it's by the new guy, and I think he captures the original vibe very well. So I gave this 3.75 out of 5 stars. Then Spy X Family Volume 4. This got 5 out of 5 stars. Same praises as the other volumes, except in this one, we get to meet Bond, who is their future-seeing dog. It's also a really fun arc, and we get to see more of Anya's shenanigans. This really hones in on how young she is, and it's just so... It's so funny watching a 5-year-old do these things. This one I think I laughed the hardest at. My battery's dying, so I gotta hurry up. The next one I read is Demon Slayer, The Flower of Happiness. This is not by the original author. This is actually by Aya Yajima. This is a book of short stories that take place within the Demon Slayer universe. These are cute, but like the other book, none of them really stood out to me. I don't think they really added to the characters except Kanao and Aoi. And they're also incredibly corny, and it's a really, really bad case of an author telling rather than showing. And let me fucking tell you, a character I can't stand is Zenitsu, and he is just as fucking annoying as in this book as he is in the OG series. Kind of drove me nuts, but there were cute moments, there's cute art, 3.5 out of 5 stars. And finally, the last book I read in the month of March is Tokyo Ghoul Illustrations Zaki by Sui Ishida. This is an art book of the manga Tokyo Ghoul where he shows the cover art, some sketches that he made, and he makes little side comments here and there. If you don't know what Tokyo Ghoul is about, I have been talking about it on this channel since 2020, but it's my favorite manga series. And it takes place in a world where ghouls run amok. They disguise themselves as humans, but their diet is consistent of just coffee and humans. And then one day our main character, Ken Kaneki, has an organ transplant, so he is now half ghoul and half human, and he wants to create a world where these 2 species can coexist. And this was just really fun to go through all of the art because there is some amazing, amazing stuff in this, but it's stuff, oh, I have a poster of that, but it's like stuff like this, and I just went too fast. And I wish I could hang some of this up. Like, look at that. Like, amazing, amazing color palettes here. But I had a very fun, nostalgic time with this, and it was so fun to reminisce, and Sui Ishida's side comments are hilarious. It was nice to learn more and more about his thought process, because he would show original sketches. He's like, this is what I wanted, this is what we ended up with, this is why I chose this color palette, this is why he's drawn that way. And I'm always a sucker for when an author talks about their creative process. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. And that's it. Those are all the books I read in the month of March. I really struggled making this video, so hopefully I don't struggle editing it, and hopefully y'all don't struggle like listening to it. I don't know. Girl, I don't know what's going on anymore. Philadelphia just had 2 earthquakes, and the eclipse is coming soon, so like something's in the air. Oh, and this was right after we had a really bad thunderstorm. Girl, like 100 years ago, someone would have been like burnt at the stake. But that's it. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what you think of them. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. Without further ado, I'm gonna peace out, and I'll see you guys later. Ciao tutti.